Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us for this lecture titled Behavior and Social Dynamics of Whales and Dolphins. The speaker is Anouk Ilangakoon, who is a pioneer in the field of research on marine mammals, starting way back in 1985 when she was in the National Aquatic Resources Agency, NARA. She's a member of the Cetacean Specialist Group of the IUCN Species Survival Commission. And she also authored the first guidebook on whales and dolphins for Sri Lanka, and has contributed chapters to several national and international books on cetaceans and sirenians. Now, with over 50 scientific papers published in peer-reviewed journals, he was awarded the President's Award for Scientific Publication in 2014. Anouk has been doing a lot of research from boats out in the Indian Ocean. I think not only the Indian Ocean, in other oceans as well, but she has been very much a water-based cetacean researcher, and we are very privileged to have her here. So without further ado, Anouk, would you please take over and give us your views? If anyone has any questions, please post them on the chat box, or wait until the end of the lecture before you ask questions. Okay, Anouk, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Malik, and good evening to everyone who is here. And so today's topic is behavior and social dynamics of whales and dolphins. It was suggested by Lester, and so I'm happy to do that. And so I will concentrate only on the behavior and social dynamics. So let's get into it now. Okay, so if we talk about whales and dolphins are highly social aquatic mammals. They exhibit a wide range of behavioral patterns. Some of their behavior has arisen due to being warm-blooded mammals that have adapted to living in their watery environment for their whole life. And other types of behavior are harder to understand and decipher, as we will see as we go more deep into this. I will illustrate later the behavior that can and cannot be deciphered. And also, these varying behaviors can be between species and also within species, depending on what part of their life cycle they are engaged in at any given time. Examples to illustrate these variations will not be limited to species found in Sri Lanka, because we are talking about behavior and social dynamics today. So I will draw from my experiences with other species in the wider Indo-Pacific and North Atlantic as well. So when we talk about common behaviors that are common to most species of whales and dolphins, they are functional behavior, meaning that that kind of behavior is functional to their lives. And this is the kind of behavior we see all the time. And also we kind of can understand why they do these things. So let's look at some of these things that are common to most whales and dolphins. One that is common to all whales and dolphins is being born tail first, which is unusual, because in land mammals, if we call it a breech birth, and it's something abnormal. But all whales and dolphins are born with their tail first and not their head first. And that is the norm for whales and dolphins. Another common behavior is spy hopping, what we call spy hopping, where they poke their heads out of the water. Then there's breaching, which is jumping out of the water and other aerial behavior. And there's logging, which is when they lie on the surface of the water. Fluking up and tail slapping. That's where they bring their tails out of the water and sometimes slap them around on the surface. So we'll take a closer look and I will illustrate what these terms mean and also why they happen. So if we talk a little bit about breech birth, so why is it the norm for whales and dolphins to be born tail first? Firstly, as I said, they are mammals. So they are air-breathing mammals, unlike fish. Fish have gills and they can breathe underwater. But whales and dolphins need to come to the surface to breathe because they have lungs just like us. They are mammals. So it makes a lot of sense for a mammal that lives in the water to be born tail first, because otherwise, the baby, before it's fully clear of the mother's body, would try to breathe and it would breathe in water and it would drown. So when it's born tail first, as you can see in the second picture below, the head comes out last. That's where its blowhole is. Its nose is what we call a blowhole. And as soon as the entire head is clear of the water, the mother will push the baby up to the surface to take its first breath. So this is why they are born tail first. You can see in the last picture, that's a humpback whale pushing its calf to the surface to breathe. And so that is why this is normal for whales and dolphins. Spy hopping. Spy hopping is where they poke their heads out of the water and look around. Why do they do this? Basically to satisfy their curiosity, but also because if you look at the eyes of whales and dolphins, they are capable of seeing well both below and above water. Unlike us, I mean, we don't see clearly when we are underwater, but they can see clearly both above water and underwater. So they poke their heads up and look around to see what's happening on the surface. Especially if there is some disturbance or something that piques their curiosity, they will put their heads out and turn around and look around. Other types of aerial behavior, these can be varied and it can vary with species as well. Large whales tend to breach or jump out of the water in social contexts, which we will take a little closer look at when we talk about their breeding. Some species of dolphins do vertical leaps out of the water. This is particularly when they are in large aggregations. Spinner dolphins are special because they are the most common species in Sri Lanka, but they also not only do they leap vertically out of the water, they leap out and then they spin before they fall back into the water. Now, there is a theory that they do this to get rid of parasites on their skin. But personally, I don't think that is the reason, because if that were the reason, other species would do it as well because they are capable of doing it. But other species leap out, but they don't spin. So it is a behavior specific to spinner dolphins, and that's why they are called spinner dolphins. Logging. What is logging? Well, when a number of animals just float at the surface in close proximity to each other without much movement, we call it logging because they look like floating logs. The picture here shows a pod of sperm whales that are logging at the surface. And this is when they're actually resting. They're not doing anything other than breathing. And they just lie there resting or even maybe sleeping for quite a long time sometimes. in between bouts of feeding, they will come and log at the surface, particularly on sunny days. And so we call this logging because they look like floating logs. Fluking up and tail slapping. Now, fluking up, different species use fluking up for different things. Some large whales fluke up at the onset of a deep dive. Now, the prime example of this is the blue whale. Blue whales bring their flukes out of the water only when they do a deep dive. They could do shallow dives without bringing their tails out of the water. And the reason for that is when they do a deep dive, they dive at a very steep angle. And because of that, their tails come out of the water with the cascading waterfall, which is fascinating to see. And likewise, some species like humpback whales also do this. When they're diving, they bring their flukes out of the water. But there are other species that never bring their flukes out of the water, like Bluedus whales, for instance. They don't bring their flukes out of the water. So this is when they dive deep. Some dolphins that live in very shallow water habitats and feed on muddy bottoms will hold their flukes upright out of the water. And that is because virtually they are standing on their head because the water is shallow and they are feeding at the bottom. They are digging into the mud at the bottom. And so their tails come out of the water. And an example of this is in the Pacific humpback dolphins, which we can see in the Kalpitia lagoon, Kalpitia and Putlam lagoons in shallow water. And you can see them doing this. Some whales and dolphins also fluke up in social contexts as a form of signaling to their other members of their group. And tail slapping is normally used in a social context where they, especially on their breeding grounds, species like humpback whales and right whales thrash their tails around, creating a lot of spray and noise. And this is part of their breeding behavior. Others may use it as a form of defense as well. I will illustrate this and talk about this a little more when we talk about caregiving and defense, because sperm whales are a good example of this, where they use their tails as a defense mechanism. So now coming to social dynamics. Whales and dolphins are highly social mammals in general, but their pod size varies by species and also by life cycle stages. For instance, some species have seasonal feeding grounds where they tend to be quite solitary, like the large baleen whales that filter feed. And they have separate breeding grounds located far away where they aggregate in large numbers and they don't feed at that time. So they undertake long annual migrations between these feeding and breeding sites. And other species live in large schools that can either be very stable over time or fluid, where pods may grow or shrink in size in an irregular manner in what we call a fission fusion society. So let's take a closer look at some of these the social dynamics in terms of functionality. So if we talk about feeding, large baleen whales are filter feeders. They feed on microscopic organisms like krill, and they are generally solitary when they are feeding. The reason being, it's not that they don't like to be social, but it is a functional necessity because each whale needs a large quantity of food each day. And if they were to all gather and feed in one place, there wouldn't be enough food to go around. So therefore, when they're feeding, they tend to stay apart and they are usually solitary. But in areas of high food abundance, they can be seen in large numbers, feeding in proximity to each other and even cooperatively. Now, Bubble netting by humpback whales is a prime example of this. If you look at the picture on the left there, that is a diagram of what bubble netting is. What they do is they blow a curtain of bubbles from underwater surrounding a school of fish. And the school of fish, it's almost like they're inside a net. And so the fish don't break through this bubble net because they feel they can't. But they can if they want to, but they feel they can't. And then if you're on the surface, what you see is these aquamarine patches appearing in the middle picture on the surface of the water. That's all you start seeing at first. And then one by one, through these patches, the whales will come out with their mouths open. And in this context, they all feed in close proximity to each other. Only humpback whales do this. But also other species where food is abundant, you can see more than one whale at a time. Example is blue whales off our south coast and in Trincomalee sometimes. You can see more than 10 whales feeding within sight of each other, but not in really close proximity like the humpback whales, but still within sight of each other. So being solitary when they are feeding is dependent on the abundance of food. Right. Now, sperm whales, if you look at sperm whales, they are also large whales, but they are not filter feeders. Sperm whales feed on cephalopods or deep water squid, very large squid that live in very deep water. So that's their primary source of food. They will take other kinds of food when the opportunity arises, but this is the primary source of food. So they dive deep, and in those depths, competition for food is less because there aren't that many other creatures hunting these giant squids. And so because of that, although they are large whales, they can afford to live in groups throughout the year. They don't have to be solitary when they feed. And so the sperm whale society, as a result, is very similar to land-living elephants. They form very stable family groups of females and their young and subadults of both sexes. They live in groups. They live in very stable family groups. But the males, as they become adult, just like in elephants, they will roam far and wide looking for mates. They will move between, they will not stay with their family pod, but they will move to other pods looking for mates. But the family pod itself is very stable, highly stable, and they stay together throughout the year. They defend each other, they help each other hunt, and they care for each other. We will see later as when I talk about that. But so again, this is functional because, because of their food source and because they hunt in a different way from the baleen whales, they don't need to be solitary. Dolphins and porpoises again. Now, dolphins and porpoises mainly feed on small fish, like anchovies and sardines, which are found in large schools. And therefore, dolphins and porpoises also can be found in very large schools, sometimes from hundreds to over 1,000. Prime examples are common dolphins and spinner dolphins, which can form huge schools. Sometimes you are in a school like this, and everywhere you look, there are dolphins. It's like a sea full of dolphins. You can't see the end of the school. So they can again afford to live in groups because they feed on fish and they catch the fish individually. So they can find enough food even if they live in large groups. But there are others like killer whales, humpback dolphins, some porpoises, which have more specific diets. And these will form smaller groups, which are stable and highly cohesive, like the sperm whales. So they will also cooperate with each other in catching their prey and often even share their food. Killer whales, especially the mammal-eating killer whales, are a prime example of this. The picture at the bottom there is where a pod of killer whales is cooperating with each other to try and knock a seal off an ice floe. And they will eventually, they keep bumping that ice floe until that seal falls into the water, and then they will attack it. So that's how they cooperate. And then once they catch it, they will all feed on it. So that is part of their social behavior. Some species in particular habitats are also known to cooperate with human artisanal fishermen, where it becomes a mutually beneficial thing for both the dolphins and the humans. Now, let's take a closer look at this, because this is of particular interest. One example that I have personally witnessed is Irrawaddy dolphins in a particular segment of the Irrawaddy River in Myanmar cooperate with fishermen. And what happens is the fishermen have a specific kind of wooden pin, which you can see in that first picture. And the fisherman, when he's ready to go fishing, he will get in his boat and tap this pin on the side of his boat to a particular tune. And when the dolphins hear this, they immediately come. A pod of dolphins will come to the boat. And then the fisherman will stand up and get his net ready. And the dolphins will go and start corralling the fish towards the boat. And when the dolphins feel it's time to throw the net, one dolphin will bring its fluke out of the water and make a big splash, as you see in that third picture. And that is the signal for the fisherman to throw his net. And how the dolphin benefits is it makes it easier for them to catch fish, because when the fish get caught in the net, they get excited and some of them start jumping out. So the dolphins just hang around where the net is and catch all the fish that are jumping out. And some of my colleagues who have researched this have done extensive interviews with these fishermen, and they have been told that the fish catch per cast of the net is about 60% higher for the fishermen if they fish with the dolphins rather than if they fish without the dolphins. So it is definitely beneficial to both. And a similar method, which I haven't actually seen, takes place with bottlenose dolphins in Brazil, where in coastal waters, those fishermen, the dolphins come so close to shore that those fishermen don't even need to use a boat. They actually wade into the shallow water, waist deep, and then the bottlenose dolphins will come and bring the fish in towards them. And there the signal is given by one dolphin raising its head out of the water, not its tail. And then the fisherman will cast his net. So again, it is cooperation between dolphins and fishermen. And this is traditional. Certainly in Myanmar, it has been going on for many, many years. And it's traditional, and it's the fishermen consider the dolphins their brothers, and they're partners in fishing. So, and they are very, very concerned about these dolphins. If anything happens to any of these dolphins, they get very upset, and they protect them because they know that they help them to fish. So that's something interesting. Then when we come to breeding now, when whales and dolphins are ready to breed, they exhibit behavior that is very unusual. It's not typical behavior, it's atypical behavior. For a prime example that I have witnessed is, again, Irrawaddy dolphins. Now, when I first started studying Irrawaddy dolphins in the Gulf of Thailand, I thought that they were the most boring species on earth, because for day after day, all we saw was just dorsal fins coming up and the top of the head coming up, but very slow moving, not active at all. And I was used to seeing exuberant species like spinner dolphins in Sri Lanka. And to me, they were absolutely boring, day in and day out. They did nothing. And then a few months down the line, we came across this mating pod. And it was almost as if they transformed into a different species. If you look at the row of pictures below, the row of pictures above is what I was talking about first, just boring. And then the pictures below, they like transformed completely in their behavior. They were all bunched up together. They were jumping on each other, practically jumping on top of each other. There was water splashing all over. They were bringing half their bodies out of the water. It's the first time I actually saw their faces, because normally they never bring their face out of the water. They were also fluking up, which they never usually do. So this is very atypical behavior that you only see when they are mating. At other times, you never see this kind of behavior from Irrawaddy dolphins. Now I've been studying them for years, and only at times when you find a breeding mating group that you see this kind of behavior. So it's not typical. Also, usually solitary and slow moving animals like large baleen whales. Now, on their breeding grounds, they aggregate. They don't feed when they're on their breeding grounds. They aggregate in large numbers on their breeding grounds. And there they exhibit high-speed chasers, flipper and fluke slapping, and breaching completely out of the water. Humpback whales are well known for breaching out of the water. But other species like right whales, Bluedus whales, minke whales, and even blue whales can breach out of the water when they are breeding. Now, the pictures there, the top row is, the first one is a humpback whale, second one is a right whale, third one is a Bluedus whale, and the last one is a minke whale. These are all in their feeding grounds, they will never display this kind of behavior. But when they are breeding, they will all jump, leap, make a big noise, make a big splash. And even the mighty blue whale, I mean, even with its huge size, it will leap out of the water when it's breeding. Now, the pictures at the bottom, interesting story. Those are off the south coast of Sri Lanka. And a friend of mine called me and said, some of my friends went whale watching and they saw a humpback whale jumping. So I said, that's interesting, because humpback whales are not common. Do they have any pictures? And he said, yes. And they actually want to share it with you. And that's why I'm calling. So I said, okay, send the pictures. And these are the pictures they sent me. And as soon as I saw it, I realized it's a blue whale, not a humpback whale. So I asked them later on, why did you think it was a humpback whale? And they said, because it breached. And I said, it's not a humpback whale, it's a blue whale. So all whales can breach when they are breeding. Okay. Talking of social cohesion and mass strandings are an interesting phenomenon. Now, whales and dolphins occasionally strand. They come up on the beach while they're still alive. When a single animal comes up on the beach, it's usually due to sickness or injury. And it's usually a dying animal that will come up on the beach like that. But mass strandings are more interesting to today's topic, because when mass strandings happen, usually it is always species that live in family groups that are highly cohesive. It's only those species that strand en masse. Species like sperm whales, pilot whales, false killer whales, melon-headed whales, pygmy killer whales. But we loosely term blackfish because they are mostly black in color. But all these species can mass strand. And so why does this happen? Why do they strand en masse like this? There are different theories about this, but usually it is because the leader of the group gets disoriented due to some reason, either illness or injury, or it can even be something else like anomalies in the Earth's magnetic field, because they use the magnetic field to navigate. And we think that anomalies in the Earth's magnetic field cause mass strandings because there are certain places, particularly in places like New Zealand, certain beaches where mass strandings occur repeatedly and of different species also, not always the same species. So for mass strandings to occur on those particular beaches, if repeatedly, there has to be something wrong with that place, which is something that's interfering with their navigation. And so that can also lead to mass strandings. Now, when mass strandings occur, of course, we want to help. But it's very important to understand their social structure when we try to help them. Because if it is because the leader is sick or injured, and that's why they have stranded, like what happens is that that particular animal will strand, and then the others come to help it, and they get stranded as well. So when we try to help them and put them back in the water, we have to understand this. And we have to, unfortunately, we have to practice triage, because uh, otherwise, as long as one or two animals even get left on the beach, they will emit distress calls, which we may not even hear, but the whales will hear. And all the others that you put back in the water will come back again, because they're trying to help the ones that are left. So first we have to check all the animals and see if there are any animals that are too far gone, like they're really sick and already dying, or they are badly injured and they will not survive. And if there are such animals, we have to euthanize them before we try to get the others into the water. And after that, we should try to move the healthy animals back into the water. That's the only way to really be successful in helping them back into the water. Otherwise, they'll keep coming back. And each time they come back, more and more animals will get injured and more animals will die. So it's better to euthanize those few and then move the others into the water, because once they don't hear any animals calling on the beach, they will go. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about epimeletic behavior and empathy. Now, epimeletic behavior is actually caregiving behavior. So, dolphins and whales are known to help each other in times of sickness and injury. What happens is, like, if one animal, like what we just spoke about, the mass strandings is one instance of that. Likewise, even in dolphins, the first picture there is a sick dolphin is unable to stay on the surface to breathe. Its family members will support it at the surface. They will hold it up at the surface so that it can breathe. So that has been witnessed. Then there's also alloparenting, where if a calf loses its mother for some reason, if the mother dies, others in the pod, other females in the pod will look after it. And also, they practice babysitting. Now, a prime example of babysitting is sperm whales. Now, as I said before, sperm whales dive deep to find their food. And little babies are not able to stay underwater for so long without breathing. So they have to leave the little babies at the surface when they dive for food. And the mothers have to feed, but the babies will be fed on milk. So they don't actually need to find their food, but they can't accompany the mothers because the mothers are diving deep. Excuse me. And at times like that, they will leave one adult at the surface with all the calves. Now, we have actually witnessed this in the Trincomalee Canyon, where one adult stays on the surface with the calves, and the rest of the pod will dive to find their food. When they come up again, the next time they dive, the animal that stayed the first time will dive, and another animal will take its place. So basically what they're doing is babysitting. And so that's the kind of social organization they have within these pods. Also, in times of defense, when they are in danger, when they are being attacked by something, they will get together to defend each other. Now, again, sperm whales are a good example of this. I told you they use their tails in defense. And if you look at the diagram there in the middle, that is what we call a marguerite formation, where, say, for instance, sometimes killer whales will attack a sperm whale calf. And if the calf is already injured, or if a particular calf is being attacked, what the rest of the pod will do is put the calf in the middle, and they will surround it like a flower, in the formation of a flower, what we call a marguerite formation, with their heads pointing towards the animal, the animal that's being attacked, and that tails pointing outwards. So then if the killer whales try to get to that animal again, they have to get through those powerful tails. Every time the killer whales try to come, the sperm whales will use their tails to hit them. And so they use the tail in defense like that. And the picture next to the diagram is an actual photograph of a marguerite formation. It's very difficult to see a marguerite formation from the surface, and this picture has been taken from underwater, so it's clearer. And this kind of caregiving can also, and defense, can also extend to humans. Now, fishermen throughout the ages, in many cultures, not just in Sri Lanka, but in many cultures throughout the world, fishermen have considered dolphins their friends. They always say they come to our aid. But fishermen are such that they don't talk in specifics. So, though they say they come to our aid, they don't tell you exactly how. But more recently, we have known human swimmers and divers who have been threatened by shark attacks, and where dolphins have actually come and ram the sharks and helped them to get away. So we know that they extend this kind of behavior even to people. They are also capable of empathy. They can grieve, for instance. Many species have been recorded carrying dead calves around for periods of hours to several days. That is because obviously they are grieving for their dead calf. They don't want to leave it. They don't want to let it go. And so the pictures below are of different species, actually. The first two pictures are bottlenose dolphins. The third picture is of a beaked whale. That's an interesting picture because we know very little about beaked whale behavior. They have very cryptic behavior, difficult to study. So this is a beaked whale carrying a dead calf. And the last one is a killer whale carrying its calf that is dead. So they are capable of empathy and care and grieving. Next, although they are like that, they can also be aggressive. They can be aggressive towards their own species and towards other species. Now, when it comes to aggression towards their own species, we really don't know why this happens. Infanticide has been recorded in several species, and we don't know why it happens. They kill their own calves. Now, that first picture is a bunch of Pacific white-sided dolphins. You can see the calf in the middle there. It's bleeding near the mouth already. And there are several larger animals attacking it. The other two pictures on the top row are bottlenose dolphins, where they actually throw the calves around. They throw them out of the water, and finally they will jump on top of them and drown them. So these have been recorded, this kind of infanticide, but we really don't know why. These are some of the behaviors that I said we don't know how to decipher. We don't really know why. Also, they can show aggression and kill other species. Now, the row of pictures below are all of bottlenose dolphins attacking porpoises, harbor porpoise. Now, this we can explain to some extent, because here they are sharing a habitat and they are competing for food. So the more aggressive and larger species would try to attack one or two animals from the smaller species and make the rest of the group move away. so that there won't be competition for food. It could be that. I mean, that's what we think it is, but we are not sure. But why they attack their own calves, we have absolutely no idea. Whales and dolphins are also capable of cultural learning. When I say cultural learning, I mean they can learn from each other. Now, they're intelligent and they teach each other things. For instance, an example that we have seen of recent years is bottlenose dolphins in Monkey Mia in Australia. Now, they feed on very rocky bottoms which have sharp rocks and which can injure their rostrum or their beak. And one particular female started carrying a sponge on its beak. And then she taught this behavior to her calf and her previous calves that were already adult. And they all started, that family started carrying sponges on their beaks to protect the beak. And then this phenomenon also spread to others in their group. So now there are many dolphins there carrying sponges on their beaks. Also, in recent years, there has been a very strange behavior in killer whales in the Mediterranean, where they have started attacking the boats, the rudders and hulls of boats. Now, this again, at the beginning, it was just one whale that did it. It repeatedly attacked rudders of boats. But after about 18 months, there were 3 whales doing it. And now there are many. And it's become so bad that they are actually sinking. They have already sunk several boats. And we still don't understand why they're doing it and why they suddenly started doing it. So again, they are teaching each other to do it as well. And we have no explanation as to why they are doing it. Also, the evolution of humpback whale song. Now, humpback whales sing complex, long songs when they're on their breeding grounds. The males sing. And this song evolves over time. It changes. But at any given time, all the humpback whales in a given ocean or a given habitat will be singing the same song. Meaning when one whale changes the song, all the others will follow. So they're learning from each other again. So that again is what we call cultural learning. So whales and dolphins, in terms of behavior and their social dynamics and social structures, are very interesting to study. We know very little at the moment. There's a lot more to learn. And so this is just an overview of what we know already. But there are things that we still don't know. We need to study and we need to try to understand. So thank you. Thank you to all who have joined this meeting. And special thank you to the Natural History Society, President Lester and Dr. Malik for inviting me to make this presentation. And also Harshada and Hiroshi for all the technical support, setting up the Zoom links and all that. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Anouk. That was a fascinating story. Very fascinating. So I don't see any questions on the chat box yet. Does anyone wish to ask anything?
I would like to ask a question, Dr. Malik from Anouk.
Go ahead.
You mentioned about the matriarchal society of humpbacks. Is a matriarchal society common to whales across the board, or is that something peculiar to humpbacks only?
Not humpbacks. I mentioned sperm whales.
The sperm, I'm
Patriarchal
sorry,
societies for
sperm
sperm whales.
whales.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
it's only the sperm
Yeah,
whales.
yeah. It's not for the other large whales.
Okay.
Anouk,
Go ahead, Lester.
yeah, just one question. Considering the Ganges river dolphin and the Indus river dolphin, they got their blowholes horizontal rather than like the usual one. Is there any
Yeah.
particular reason?
We don't know. We don't really know, Lester, why it is horizontal. But also,
Yeah.
there are other species, like for instance, sperm whale. It's to a side, the blowhole. So we don't know why, but
Pretty interesting, yeah.
Hi,
Excuse
I
me.
also go.
It is said that the sperm whale clicks, they are very loud as nearly as 250 decibels. So how do the researchers manage to do the researchers with them to to dive with them?
pardon? Okay, can you come again? What was the question?
Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes. What was the question again?
Madam, the sperm whales, the
Yes.
sperm whale clicks.
Yes.
It is said that they are very loud, like they can, they are like explosive. They are nearly loud as 250 decibels. So, how do the researchers manage to dive with the sperm whales?
You mean why doesn't it harm people? Is that what you are
Yes.
asking? Well,
Yes.
actually, when we are underwater, we don't hear the sounds that loud when we are underwater. But their clicks are very loud because that is how they communicate with each other. But it's not loud enough to actually harm us if we are diving with them.
Okay, madam. Thank you.
Hi, I had one question. I've been hearing that the last years they have seen less whales in Sri Lanka, especially the larger species like blue whales and sperm whales. Are there any plausible explanations you have heard, maybe from people actively researching that at the moment? What could explain this trend, or is it something that whales come in like cycles in years, or yeah, do you have any possible explanations for that?
It could be related to food. It could be related to their food, but it also could be related to the whale watch industry. Because I predicted this many years ago that if we keep harassing them, they're going to move. And when they say there are less whales, I don't really believe that. It's just that they are not in the area where the whale watch boats go during the day. They will come to those same areas and feed at night, even now. So the whales are there. It's just that the whale watching industry is not seeing them because they have harassed them to such an extent that they moved.
So there's no possible reason to believe that there are at the moment actually less whales around Sri Lanka.
No.
They're just on other places. Okay.
No, they're there, but they will feed at different times when the boats are not there. Because whales feed throughout the day. They feed 24 hours. They don't, only feed during the day. So they will also feed at night. So they will move offshore and feed during the day and come inshore at night.
Well, good for them then.
There are some questions on the chat box. The first one is, are the pictures all your own and how close can you get to the animal?
The pictures are not all my own. And when you say how close can you get to the animals, what do you mean?
Shereen?
What do you mean by how close can you get to the animals?
Shereen, can you respond to that, to your question? Anyway, we'll move on to the next question, if I can find it. Can you send a recording of the lecture? Yes, the recording will be posted on the Natural History Society website in time.
Thank you.
Arden asked, what about the use of sound by sperm whales to stun the prey like large squid?
They do use clicks to stun prey sometimes, but more often their clicks are for communication purposes rather than for hunting. They don't actually need to use sound, but they do sometimes. But it is not their primary way of hunting.
Madam, I have a question to you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Then my question is, in your first pictures, I have seen there is a large flock of birds. Around the whales appeared on the surface. What is the
Yes.
reason behind that?
Because the birds are also feeding on the same fish that the whales are feeding on. So when the fish are jumping again, it's easy for the birds to catch them.
Okay, thank you, madam.
The lecture recording will be uploaded to the SLNHS YouTube channel for those of you who would like to see it again or who missed part of the lecture. Shireen asked another question. Can you swim with them? Now, this is a very contentious subject, isn't it? Anouk, what do you say?
What is it? What?
Can you swim with whales and dolphins? That's the question.
Legally, you can't in Sri Lanka.
So there are lots of sites, tourist sites advertising swimming with whales and dolphins, isn't it? This is one of the problems that we have. We have laws, but we don't enforce our laws.
Totally agree with that.
Maybe the route and timing is changed, not seen. This can be the reason. I feel I don't know what that is in.
What is it?
To the question that says maybe the route and timing is changed, so not seen, possibly referring to the absence of whales by whale watching boats.
Yeah.
Somebody writes, swimming with whales has been advertised extensively in Sri Lanka. Yes, but it's against our laws. But implementing those laws is the problem. As whales learn and adapt, will this not change their patterns and maybe move out of Sri Lanka? That's the question, Anouk. As whales learn and adapt, will this not change their patterns and maybe move out of Sri Lanka?
I don't think they need to actually move out of Sri Lanka because they can just change their, feeding patterns and where they feed, because whales are found throughout Sri Lanka's waters, not only in coastal waters anyway. And so if they want to, they can always feed at night in the coastal waters. They are very adaptable creatures. So they will change with their needs.
Another question I've heard some divers say they are afraid of dolphins. Why is that?
I really don't know. Maybe they have had some bad experiences. I wouldn't know why they say that. Like I said, they can be aggressive if they are annoyed.
Madam, I have a question.
Yes.
So you talked about killing the small cubs. So
Yes.
is it the mother killing its own offspring or another animal in the same pot?
Usually other animals in the same pot.
So have you found any evidence like that cub has some abnormality or any
No,
disease? That's why
we
they
don't
killed
know.
it?
We don't really know. We don't know the reason.
I'll then ask another question. Is there evidence that whale watching has altered the behavior in other parts of the world?
Yes, certainly. There is evidence in other parts of the world where whale watching has caused different species to actually change their habits and change their behavior also.
Well, we've come to the end of the question on the chat box. The time is 7:30. Lester, would you like to take over and conclude the meeting?
I have a question. Can I ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, so like how ma'am said, an adult whale leaves his pod to search for the mate, search for his mate. So once he finds his mate, so do they face any difficulties while getting into another pod of their mate or like creating another pod?
No, they don't. Usually they are accepted.
Okay, thank you.
Lester? Lester, are you with us still?
I am there, yes.
Yeah,
Thanks,
okay.
Anouk.
Please take
Thanks
over.
for taking the invitation without any hesitation. And thanks for being my guru throughout. And we still talk a lot about, and guru and also we colleagues, but we worked a lot together and still keep that relationship. And we still learn a lot of, I still learn a lot of things from her. And thank you so much, Anouk. It's been a fantastic talk. I mean, I wish we had another hour or so to talk much deeper, but time constraints are there. So thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Malik, for helping get along with this and steering the Natural Society through the good and the bad times. So thank you, Anouk. Thank you so much. And
Yeah, just one thing, Lester, before we finish. Just
yes,
mention that next month's talk will be on insects by Amila.
yes. Next, Doctor, you can say something about that.
Next month's talk will be on insects, hopefully dragonflies and mayflies by Amila Samarbala. The notice will go out in the near future. Okay, Lester.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Anu. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's been a fantastic session. Hope to see you again at our next talk, Amla's talk on damselflies and dragonflies. Yeah. So thank you very much and take care. Good night.
Good night, Anouk.
Good night.
And thank you.
You're
Good night.
welcome.
Bye.
Get back to your dogs now. They must be waiting.
Yeah. Okay. Good night. Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Bye. Thank you, Hiroshi.
Thanks, Rishi. Thanks, Harshada. It's been super. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Yeah, welcome.
Good night.